Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Welcome. The show is in honor of, show for veterans, about veterans, and for veterans' families. And we're honored to bring this show to you. There's nothing sadder than a veteran needing help and being in trouble because he needs help at times. And thankfully, through the auspices of the Richmond County District Attorney's Office, we've instituted programs where veterans can get help, and we'll go into specifics about the program shortly. But I would like to welcome a guest, Daniel Lewis from the Richmond County Veterans Court Program.
Yes,
and,
thank you for having me.
And Amanda Wexler from the Hope Program.
Thank you.
And of course, my co-host, Paul Dietrich, retired colonel. Paul, I want to thank you for bringing this show to us because you did this particular segment, and it's your influence that's gotten it working. Dan, can we start with you and tell us a little bit about what the court program is for veterans?
Sure. So I'll just introduce myself to your viewers. My name is Daniel Lewis. I'm an assistant district attorney here in Staten Island, and among the duties that I have in the office, one of them is I'm kind of the leading person for the Richmond County Veterans Court part. It's not a program per se, it's a court part similar to the other all-purpose parts we have, but what makes the Veterans Court part unique is that it's a sentencing court, and it allows us to treat veteran defendants specifically, for their needs that are specific to the veteran population.
That's great. Amanda, tell us a little bit about the HOPE program that you run, pretty much.
Sure. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I came to the DA's office 4 months ago to be one of the program directors for the HOPE program. HOPE stands for Heroin Overdose Prevention and Education. And as I'm sure you guys know, there's a terrible drug problem happening on Staten Island. So this program was the DA's response to the crisis to see if we can help get some people into treatment and out of the court system. So the way it works is at the time of arrest, I'm called, me and one other person, and the person who's arrested has to be for a criminal possession of a substance in the 7th degree. It's a misdemeanor offense. They can't have a lengthy history of arrest. They can't have a sales history or a felony history. And those people are allowed to come into the program, and within 37 days' time, as long as they're meeting some goals towards health, we are able to decline to prosecute the case, and they get into some kind of services instead of going through the court system.
Okay. Now, for clarification purposes, your program is not geared strictly for veterans. It's for everybody.
Correct.
Okay.
Anyone can participate.
And in order for a veteran, he has to tell you he's a veteran if he gets into your program.
He has to identify.
Has to identify himself, okay.
So if you're a veteran out there who has a problem, even if you have not been arrested, we're going to give Amanda's phone number. It's important that you get the help that you need before it becomes an issue, because sooner or later it will become an issue.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's right.
Okay, before the program is over, we're going to give both numbers where they can reach out for your help.
Of course.
Specifically, Dan, with your program, what are the guidelines for a veteran to be into your program?
Okay, so again, it's less a program and more of a court part. It's a sentencing court, and just generally the way it works is if somebody who is a defendant in a criminal case, but that person is a veteran. I'll just echo, what Paul said, which is that that person has to self-identify as, as a veteran. He or she should tell his or her defense attorney that he's a veteran, and his defense attorney will disclose that to our office, and then we'll screen the file. And if that person is eligible, then we can take a plea in the Richmond County Veterans Court part. So the initial question is, well, how do we determine whether the person is eligible? And the first part is the veteran defendant will submit a member for copy of his or her DD-214, which, if you're a veteran, then you know what that means.
Right.
If you're not, just for everybody's situational awareness, it's the piece of paper that you get at discharge that shows your term of service, your awards, where you were stationed, and the characterization of your discharge. But once we receive that, then we will reach out to the defense attorney and ask the defense attorney, hey, what's going on with this person, particularly with regards to his or her military service. Maybe that I don't want to get into the specifics of anyone's case. Obviously,
right.
but maybe this person spent some time deployed for an extended period of time in a combat zone or even not in a combat zone, and as a result of his or her military experience, when they came back home, developed some PTSD or an alcohol problem or something like that. And if there's a nexus between the problem that the veteran is suffering from and the crime that was committed, so going with our hypothetical situation, if somebody had a drinking problem and maybe was arrested for DUI, that's a good nexus between a crime committed and a veteran who's suffering from an alcohol problem based on his or her service. Then that person would be eligible to have his case heard and his sentence administered by the Richmond County Veterans Court part. So that's the eligibility phase. And once someone is eligible, then my office can extend an offer to them where they would plead guilty typically to the top charge and would agree to get some sort of help for the condition that they're facing. So if it's a drug problem, then maybe some help with substance abuse. If it's an alcohol problem, some alcohol treatment. And then once they're successful in combating, those demons, then the top count plea will generally be vacated and they'll be left with a much more favorable disposition to their case. In some limited circumstances, their case could be outright dismissed. And other ones, they would receive a violation, or maybe if it was a felony arrest, then they'd be left with just a misdemeanor conviction and not the full felony conviction. And I should say that the Richmond County Veterans Court part is presided over by Judge Rooney, who's a veteran. Who's a veteran and a fantastic man. I can't say enough good things about Judge Rooney. And he does a great job with these veterans and making sure that they get the chances that they deserve, in their treatment. And it's a court part that's dedicated specifically to addressing their issues. And another one of the advantages of it is the resources that are available in the Veterans Court part, primarily the VA, who is kind of our primary partner, in this.
Right.
So based on all the resources we have, we're able to really do a nice job, getting treatment to these folks, who have a service-related condition, and get them the treatment they need as part of, the plea.
For clarification purposes, you are also a veteran.
I am,
Again,
yes.
you mentioned the judge is a veteran, but
Yes.
you're a veteran. You
Yeah,
served
that's
in
true.
Korea, if I'm not mistaken.
I did for almost not quite 3 years, but in the 90s I was in Korea for a while, and then I did my last tour, Fort Lewis, Washington, before I got out of active duty. And I'm actually still in the National Guard reserves now.
Thank you for your service.
No, it's my honor.
Tell us a little bit more about the HOPE program, Amanda.
Sure. So part of what we're seeing statistically, we haven't specifically, no one has specifically identified as a veteran yet, although it's possible. But we're seeing a lot of opioid-related arrests. So right now we have 169 people in the program. Out of those, 100 people were arrested with an opioid. So what that means, it could be heroin, it could be Percocet or OxyContin, it could be methadone or buprenorphine. So prescription medications and illicit substances. It's a huge amount, and that's just a small group. HOPE just accounts for a small group of people who were arrested. The NYPD data since the beginning of the program in January, there's been 450 people arrested for these types of crimes. So if the statistics match, we're looking at a lot of opioids that are around. And what we see on the treatment side, before I came to the DA's office 4 months ago, I worked in outpatient addiction treatment at the YMCA, and we saw veterans come through there, and we saw, people who were responding to pain, taking opioid medications, either prescribed or not, in response to physical pain or emotional pain. So we want to be able to reach people and let them know whether they're in it and already abusing these substances, or if it's before. We want to be able to help them before that happens. So people are welcome to call me, they're welcome to call anyone in the office, and there's other resources as well to try to get connected to help.
Now, someone has to be arrested to be into your program?
Into the program as it stands now, yes. We're hoping to expand to include people who are not legally mandated to do something, but if people are interested and not arrested, they can still call, and I'll be able to help.
Okay. Do you have a number we can give out to the audience now that they can reach you?
Absolutely. My office number is 718-556-7113, and that's a direct line to me, so that's a great way.
Okay. Do you have a number, Dan, that we can give out?
I do, absolutely. It's 718-556-7118. And I obviously would welcome, calls from anyone, but just, in the interest of protecting defendants', status, I would encourage that person's defense counsel to call me instead of, the defendant, him or herself, if you have an active and open criminal case.
Very
obviously.
good point. Very good point. With the Veterans Program, the Veterans Court, I had to ask you a question in the green room. We talking about marital situations, orders of protection. Does that come under the auspices of the Veterans Court?
Right. So the short answer is it can. Most counties throughout New York have Veterans Court parts, at this stage. And, thankfully, under DA McMahon, we now too have a Veterans Court part. Most of the other counties that I'm aware of kind of have a bright line rule against taking domestic violence cases. We don't cut with that sharp of a knife. I would say that we consider domestic violence, cases, but it's really on a case-by-case basis, and we are very cognizant of the special needs that domestic violence dynamic brings. So any disposition that that was administered by the Veterans Court part, where it was a domestic violence case, we would want to have full extended conversations with the victim in that case, and to make sure that he or she was completely aware of all the ins and outs of the Veterans Court part and what the ultimate outcome of the case would be.
Very interesting. Paul, I'm going to turn a question to you now.
Sure.
In your experience as a commander in the military, what did the military do when they identified problems of the the drug user, for lack of a better phrase?
Well, it really depends on how the situation developed. The most common case, again, I was a reserve commander. Every month I would get on my office a list of, unfortunately, positive tests. And I had roughly 1,600 soldiers, men and women, throughout 5 states in my command. And I would get anywhere from 3 to 5 a month. Most were, at that time, it was in the early 2000s, were for marijuana. I did get OxyContin hits, I did get heroin hits, I had just about every drug out there that you can imagine that showed up in soldiers' urinalysis. In most cases, it's handled administratively. It's an administrative separation from the service. That is the most common outcome. At the time, when I was a commander, the commander at my level had the option to recommend that a soldier be retained. Normally, the guidance was it was a junior soldier, and it was for marijuana, and the commanders at every level up the chain to me had to agree. So that's 2 other commanders had to at least agree that this person they felt was rehabilitatable by themselves, because there was no counseling or program. It was, hey, you screwed up, wake up or you're out. That person at that time got drug tested every month for the next year. So that was the back check to make sure that the kick in the ass basically worked. Anything else? The concern, the day after I took command of brigade was the day the war in Iraq started, so we were at war. In fact, my first decision, as I mentioned on the show before, was which soldier was going tomorrow. So, real nice decision to have to make. But in any case, the concern is you have a soldier with a weapon, with live bullets, in the same hole as you, basically. You really can't have that person with whatever issues they have having a weapon and in combat. It's incompatible with it. So administratively, they were processed out of the service. That was the answer to us. I would say in the 3 years I was a brigade commander, probably 5 that were recommended for retention, about 3 were successful, at least never showed up again hot during my tenure. We also had, at least in my command, we had a hotbed in one particular unit. And it was very distressing to come in and see 50% of your hot hits are in one particular unit. Obviously, there's a problem there. That particular unit, I could, by fiat, basically tell them, okay, everybody in this unit's testing every day. Every time they come into meeting, they're getting tested. Because you have to root these people out. They cannot serve in that capacity. And it's simply incompatible. That was how we handled it. May not be the best way, but we had to consider the other people in the unit and the fact that you're at war. Back here in the peacetime, I do know of at least one soldier, and this person is from Staten Island, who was given painkillers in the military and ended up addicted to them and ended up going through that exact process and being processed out. Mm-hmm. Was an active duty person. The painkillers were for an injury that was sustained in Afghanistan and ended up ruining that person's career. So the reason that you folks are here today and talking to people out there is because this does happen. It happens to people, it happens to good people, and we have to have some way of helping them. And hopefully this is one of the ways. Again, if you have a problem and haven't gotten in trouble yet with the law, please call Amanda. She will put you in touch with people that can help you. You need to get over this, move on with your life, and become productive. That's the reality of life.
The reason we're here is because we want to help veterans. We want to help all veterans in all cases and all types of problems that they have. And we bring this out into the light because a lot of times you may be sitting at home watching this on television knowing that you've got that problem in your family and just trying to look the other way or make believe it's not there.
Or not knowing where to call.
Exactly. And we want to give you every option possible to help the veteran in your family or to help yourself as a veteran, okay? If you were talking directly to veterans right now who have a problem, what would you tell them?
And I think off of what Paul said also, the opioids look safe. They come from a doctor, it feels like they're safe, and they are a very risky medication. So it's important that if you're taking them, to take them as prescribed, to follow the direction of the doctor. And when this thought comes like, oh, 1 made me feel really good, so 2 will probably make me feel better, that's already on a path of negative thinking. So it's important to stop that before it progresses to something worse. A lot of times what we see is that people will start with a prescription painkiller, and then they're taking so many that the doctor won't prescribe anymore. So then they start buying them on the street, and it's a slow progression, you know, to taking heroin and transitioning to those kinds of drugs. So regardless of where people are in using, they can get better. I've seen people get better in the worst conditions. So for people who are struggling with that, that's the most important message, is no matter how bad you feel, it can get better, and we can help people do that.
I think it's also important, though, that if the family sees someone has an issue, sometimes the person can't or won't, whatever reason. So again, if you have a family member that you think might have this problem, it's better for you to get them the help than it is for you. I mean, we're talking death.
Absolutely.
We're talking people dying. So.
Now, Dan, if you were addressing defense attorneys, because I mean, we know you can't talk directly to the problem, but let's say you're talking to a group of defense attorneys who just may be watching a program, what would you advise them?
I think that the first thing would be to have a very open, full, and frank dialogue with your client. Find out whether your client is a veteran. Ask the question. Don't just assume that your client is going to tell you everything proactively just because he or she's sitting in front of you and you have this attorney-client relationship. Ask the question, are you a veteran? Have you, and then ask permutations of the question, because some people don't consider themselves a veteran,
yes.
Because they don't meet the federal definition of being a combat veteran or something
yes.
like that. So ask it 2 or 3 different ways. Have you ever served? Were you ever in the military? You'd be surprised that somebody would answer, no, I'm not a veteran, but then say, well, yeah, I served for a couple years, but I was only stationed stateside. Yep. You are a veteran for the purposes of consideration for the Richmond County Veterans Court
Good.
part. So that's the first thing that I would say. And then I'd just like to piggyback off the family member, aspect that you brought up. If I was going to address the family members, of a defendant, maybe if somebody is a defendant in a criminal action, he or she feels a little bit ashamed or embarrassed to be in trouble with the law and be a veteran. I don't think that's unusual at all, and I don't think it's unusual that that person might hide the fact that he or she is a veteran. So if you're a family member of somebody who's a defendant who has military service, talk to them. Talk to them about consulting with their defense attorney and making that known to the district attorney's office so that we can get you the help that you need, through the Richmond County Veterans Court part. And if you don't mind, I'd like to bring up just one more aspect of the Veterans Court part that I neglected to mention before. And this is another aspect that's unique to the Richmond County Veterans Court part. As a aspirational goal, we hope to be able to assign every veteran defendant in the court part a mentor to work with. Our mentor coordinator, his name is Bob Mulhall. He's a veteran himself. He's a fantastic guy. I don't have his number offhand, but if you call me, I will put you in touch with Bob Mulhall if you want to volunteer to be a veteran mentor for these veteran defendants. And I think that that's a very special aspect of the court part, that we can team up, veterans with these folks, and who can serve as a support network for them, as they tackle these demons in their treatment.
That's an excellent point, because if you want somebody to really care about a veteran, ask another veteran.
Yes.
Okay, it's just, it goes with the territory, and I'm sure there are a lot of people out there, a lot of veterans out there who would want to be involved in this program where they can help other veterans. And I urge you, please call Dan and get that ball rolling, because we're there to help each other, okay? Once again, can you give your phone number one more time?
Absolutely. It's 718-556-7118.
And Amanda, can you give yours, please?
Sure. 718-556-7113.
Okay.
And I think, again, it's important that even if you're not a veteran, when you have a family member that's not a veteran that you think has this problem, if you call Amanda, she will refer you to somebody that can give you help.
Mm-hmm.
You need the help. You've got to get past this and move on with your life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and not to get political, and I certainly don't mean it to be political, but I think our district attorney, Michael McMahon, has to be commended for instituting these programs, not only for veterans, for public in general, because quite frankly, I'm tired of reading the Staten Island newspaper and seeing what a nightmare we've got out there in the streets with the opioids and all of the drug problems. It's very disheartening, especially after having spent 27 years in the police department, to see it going this way. And the fact that he's taking the bull by the horn and putting programs in to help people is very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I'm very honored at the amount of trust and confidence that he's placed, in me, and I take, serving as the, lead ADA for the Veterans Court part, very seriously. I think it's a great honor, and I agree with you. I think he's done a phenomenal job putting these programs into place, and having particularly the Veterans Court part, staffed and manned, and giving it the attention that it really deserves.
And I feel the same way in my role. I just came on 4 months ago, but this was, visionary, and we're hoping to mimic it in other parts of the city because it's a horrible problem.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to thank you for being here. Once again, Dan, Amanda, thank you so much for being here and taking part in this program. And I'd like to ask you to come back anytime. And anytime we want to bring new information out to the veteran, we'd love to have you, because it's important, it's informational, and it's there to help a veteran, and that's what we're all about. And thank you once again, Paul Dietrich, my co-host, for being here. You're watching in honor of. We thank you for watching. We love you for watching. We will continue to bring you programs to benefit the veteran, going forward in the future. You just keep watching, and we'll keep bringing you programming.
Yesterday, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.